мислам дека е во ред. Ало?
Dear guests, welcome to the second day of the annual conference, A Year of New Opportunities, organized by the government of the Republic of North Macedonia. Our today's conference will be started by the title North Macedonia as a green energy hub, how to turn crisis into an opportunity, where we are going to discuss energy challenges, the energy transformation of the country, and the potentials of green economy. I'll invite the panelists and the moderator to take their places. Thank you. Dear Prime Minister Dimitar Kovachevsky, dear participants in the panel, dear representatives of the government, dear business people, dear attendees, and the ones following us via the platforms. This is the panel number 5 out of 8 altogether, and first within the today's conference of the government under the motto A Year of New Opportunities. The focus of this panel is energy and energy sector, the key topic of the many that have preoccupied in the past year and a huge challenge for the period ahead of us. Why am I singling out energy among other important topics such as inflation, the economic situation, the growth of GDP, issues in the supply chains? Because in a way, they're all a result from what was caused by the stressors of the energy markets. First of all, a huge growth of stock prices, and then whether energy sources could be found, be it energy, natural gas, oil, and so forth. We also have the situation in the domestic energy sector, full of challenges resulting from the decade-long approach to the investment in new facilities and capacities up until now. Energy and energy sector are the key prerequisite for good growth, because without that, the prerequisites for GDP growth that would get us closer to the EU average of the current 40% compared to the EU average, then for more investment, thus creating new jobs, will not be possible. On top of that, it's not about any sources of energy, since bearing in mind the approaches in the EU, we primarily mean the green agenda energy sources. Precisely regarding these issues and others, we'll be discussing in a coming panel entitled as New North Macedonia's Energy Green Hub, how to transform the energy crisis into opportunity and enable accelerated economic growth. The participants are the Prime Minister, then the Minister of Economy Krešnik Bekteši, then Vasko Kovačevski, General Director of ESM, Marko Bislimovski, Director of the Regulatory Commission, Energy Commission, then the Professor Anton Čauševski, Advisor in the Prime Minister's Office, and Mr. Kočo Andjušev, President of the Macedonian Energy Association. My name is Mirce Jovanovski. I am a journalist at Independent MK in the role of a moderator. For the colleagues from the media, let me point out that following the completion of this panel, speakers will make their statements in the press corner. And before we move on with the working part, let me remind you briefly of the rules for each of the participants in the panel. I have envisaged 2 questions each. The time frame for responses is 4 minutes, and the time will be managed and controlled on the displays in front of us in order to adhere to the agenda. So please observe the timing. Then Prime Minister Dimitar Kovačevski, for you I have a bonus question, very specific, and I expect that kind of answer. Is there going to be an increase in prices of energy and heating energy? What can companies expect? Thank you for the question. First of all, let me thank you for having this panel members belonging to top experts and professionals in the area of energy, professors and ministers. And I can freely say that if we are joined by Victor, Fatmir, Besimi and Bayram, then everybody can see what the meetings were like on a daily basis in terms of managing the energy crisis. And I won't forget the president of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Razevski. First of all, we primarily discussed the second term of last year, whether there was going to be an increase in the price of electricity, and the opposition presupposed that there was going to be a huge increase in prices, but thanks to the hard work of the second part of panel, the managers of Rek, Bitola, Oslo, May, and so on and so forth, that is to say the management of state power plants, we increased our production, and thanks to that, we have seen a decrease of the prices of electricity in the first 2 blocks where the households belong that consume electricity, and a very mild increase in the 3rd block and a greater increase in the 4th block where we have fellow citizens using higher quantities of electricity and heating even their swimming pools during the winter, and it's not a problem for them, and it's good they can do that. Certainly they pay more expensive electricity, and for the companies, the electricity dropped down by 20%. So the companies that hire 98% of the employees in the country. If there is an increase in the price of electricity in the coming period, that is a question. I suppose that and we are working on not having such increases. In certain segments, we might even see decreases, which depends on the generation of electricity. ESM managed to increase its production by 20% compared to the previous year. For this year, we are again planning to increase the production of electricity, and I'm glad that yesterday we could see a piece of data that more than 21,000 megawatt hours electricity were generated yesterday, which is the highest production in the past 10 years, which gives us the basis to make calculations based on which we will not see a decrease in the prices of electricity. After this response, we can wrap up the panel, but yes, you said there are many questions. Yes, on my table there are many bonus problems that we are not discussing here. My first question for you relates to the following. 1 year ago only, the situation with the electricity and energy sector were rather dramatic, and now we are in the month of January. The winter is passing by, and as the first person of the government, together with the people from the ESM and ministers, you visited a number of countries in the neighborhood to enable unimpeded production of coal, gas, and electricity. When was it most difficult? Were there any risky situation? And did you suspect that your efforts wouldn't bear fruit? First of all, there were many challenges. We visited all the countries in the region that are our friends, also the United States at the beginning, that is to say towards the end of, to mid-September, to provide all the prerequisites to handle the fourth quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year, which belong to the heating season. And the primary thing was to secure, in all of those meetings, the president of the Chamber of Commerce was in attendance, and it was extremely important for me because in real time we could receive the inputs of the economy and at the same time to provide information to the business entities what the government was doing to provide electricity for companies. The challenges we were facing, first of all, were cross-border facilities and capacities with the Republic of Bulgaria. In the past, they were discontinued when we didn't have electricity. We secured that, no interruptions. And number two, supply of raw materials and energy sources from the Republic of Greece and Albania, because their electricity companies requested to reduce their exports of coal, because some of the coal is here and some of it is imported from Greece and Albania. And with the agreement with Greece, we said that they wouldn't have any problems for importing of coal, and we managed to provide sufficient raw materials and electricity in certain gaps. And we managed to put into operation all energy facilities. Nobody believed that all 3 blocks of Rek Biktola would operate. That was turned into reality. The transformer was replaced, and thanks to the good collaboration with both Turkey and Greece, we managed at the beginning of January to secure the transformer and to have continued supply of energy. Also, the United States support was significant, since in the past 20 years we haven't liberated the imports of gas in the country. That was done by one company historically. However, through the increase in the capacity of the only interconnector that we have with the Republic of Bulgaria, and through the secondary legislation passed to liberalize the market and supply the gas, this was turned into reality. And you can see now the DSM that supplies part of the gas can auction with other companies and can obtain gas from other sources. So currently we are using gas from sources coming from the United States, North Africa, and so on and so forth. So I deemed that everything that was assigned as a task to the team was completely fulfilled perfectly, I would say. Thank you. Thank you too. In the context of your answer and to the Minister Bekteshi, we know that our country is fully dependent on the imports of energy sources such as oil and gas. When can we expect, the Prime Minister has mentioned some of it, when can we expect to get one more source of gas? Where are the activities with the interconnector with Greece and Alexandroupoli LNG terminal, where the gas power plant should, our country should also be a stockholder? What about the procurement of gas from other sources and not only from Gazprom? So how is this possible for North Macedonia as an energy hub, and what are going to be the advantages for the future? Thank you for the question. I take the opportunity to thank the management of ESM, MEPSO, Nomagas, and all energy companies, and we can see our associates here, starting from the Prime Minister's advisor up until the advisors in the Ministry of Economy that were working on a daily basis in tackling the energy price crisis in terms of diversification of sources of natural gas. I can exclusively say today, bearing in mind the fact that this morning I had a meeting with the director of Noma Gas, which is a new company in our country that will deal with natural gas between Gamma and Ener mediator. So this is thanks to the initial reforms in the law on energy supported by USAID and the Mr. Andushev, and we are already working on the secondary legislation, but thanks to that, we are implementing the obligations that we've undertaken as a country to the energy community where we had open disputes in this regard. And those disputes have been completed already, and now we have a new company that is performing its job in a great way. In terms of increasing the capacity, yes, we do use these facilities by ESM Padasha that deals with imports and supply of natural gas to their plants. And they offer that to other consumers such as industry, and the zones are already getting supplied with this natural gas. The most important is that the gas imported is from the LNG terminals in Turkey and part of it from Greece, which means we have different sources compared to the previous sources, and we are not dependent only on a single source that was Gazprom regarding the interconnector, as notified by Mr. Rejepi by the end of this week and beginning of next week. We will place a public call to provide the supervision of this major project, and the second half of February will see the call for the construction of the international interconnector between the Republic of North Macedonia and Greece. That will additionally increase the capacity of our country, and certainly we will fully diversify the supply of natural gas. We are talking about the investment of 80 million euro, and the investment in the European Investment Bank has supplied the funds, a grant by the European Commission amounting to 20% of this amount was secured, and within 1 month the final decision should be rendered by EBRD. That should most probably be positive, since bearing in mind that within 4 months the entire documents were sent to their side, and only in this way can we implement the plan to develop the energy sector in our country in terms of diversification. And certain blocks in Rek Bitola will start their operation, and other locations that generate power, they will be transformed into natural gas plants, and also certain investments are envisaged for coordinating centrals in the city of Skopje, and in addition to Teta, they will be able to use gas. In terms of becoming a hub for supply of natural gas, in parallel, we are working on a new interconnector with the Republic of Serbia. And certainly with the Republic of Kosovo, I have to say that with the Republic of Kosovo, we have completed our commitment, and we've prepared the documents and observed all the procedures within WBIF, and we are expecting for their decision to continue the construction on their part, and Serbia is coming to a conclusion in terms of rendering the decision, and technical assistance together with WBF has been provided, and we are prepared to work with Greece on a new commitment, and also with the Republic of Serbia and Kosovo. Thank you. This is good news. I hope that in the implementation of the coming activities, there won't be any unforeseen problems that would delay the operations. I wouldn't believe that since we have the implementation of NER amounting to more than 90%, bearing in mind the ring that is built within the country and through the Corridor 8. We believe that mid-2024 and 2024 we will have a new interconnector with the Republic of Greece. Thank you. Mr. Kovachevsky, in one of your interviews, you said that ESM has borne the major part of the energy crisis, which is quite true. In addition to this, it undertook the heating energy for Skopje. What is the condition of energy facilities in the country, bearing in mind their age and possibilities? What can we expect for the coming winter, which is very important? Are we going to rely on the existing facilities and utilization of non-eco fuels such as crude oil and coal? Thank you for the question. In a time of energy crisis, it's most important for us to have continuous and stable supply of electricity, and also Skopje citizens, since Skopje is the only city where there is an organized heating, central heating, they can have warm homes and warm radiator. Yes. ESM has borne the greatest burden during the energy crisis in the past 1.5 years, but we also had the support of the government, the line ministers, primarily the Prime Minister Kovachevsky, and all energy companies. Through joint efforts, we've overcome a serious crisis, not only in the region, but globally. ESM managed to put into operation all capacities that generate electricity, and as mentioned by the Prime Minister, when a lot of people wanted to be drama queens, you asked us about drama situations. No, there were no drama situations. There were only difficulties and challenges to overcome the energy crisis, and certain agencies were specifying that we would have food for only 2 days and we would have restrictions in energy supply. We managed to counteract that through persistent work and lots of efforts and also all the other institutions to manage the energy crisis successfully and overcome the first strong hit by this crisis and put ourselves into the situation to manage the difficult situation and overcome only through work and work. ESM increased its domestic generation of electricity in 2022 by 26.5% compared to the previous year. And once again, we set a new task for us in 2023 to have an additional 20% increase in the domestic production of electricity, with the only goal to have continuous and stable energy supply for the citizens, primarily for small businesses and small consumers, amounting to 72,000 in number. The commitments given to us by the government to supply schools with electricity such that our children can go to school in warm classrooms, hospitals that are mainly supplied by us, then public water supply companies and utility companies for unimpeded supply of water, and some of the food processing industry without the price shocks on our commodities that would affect our daily living. This increased production would mean reducing the dependence on electricity from imports. The domestic generation reduces such costs, thus providing an opportunity as a company when the decisions for new prices of electricity are made not to have drastic increases and even to have decreases for consumers' prices. Just 2 days ago, on the Sunday, we had the record generation of electricity in the past 10 years, which means that serious preparation was carried out for energy facilities to make them stable and hopeful in the area of electricity generation. And hydro potential is also preserved, because right now we have the hydro potential at the level of the average of the past 10 years. We are preserving our water to provide systemic and balanced services in the area of electricity supply. For 1 year and a half, we've been in an energy crisis, and when there is a crisis, we should act accordingly by significant reduction of non-productive costs of all public procurement that is not necessary right now, to focus on the generation of electricity as much as possible, thus reducing the costs generated by the company, and also reduce the obligations of the government to provide financial aid, because in the past 2 years, the government in the area of electricity delivered 250 million euro support for electricity and 36 million euro to support the heating energy, which is the money from the government to the citizens, and only through ESM we helped in the management. What I can say is that in the year of new opportunities, that is to say 2023, for us, for ADSM energy companies, the government will be a year of new challenges to successfully handle the energy crisis this year as well, and build even more secure and stable electricity and energy system in the country. Thank you, Mr. Bislimovsky. A dilemma about the issue of electricity energy price posed to the Prime Minister and not to you as a President of the Regulatory Commission, because the government, through its subsidies, affects your decision as an independent regulator. Recently, you've said how many licenses you've issued for photovoltaic panels, and yesterday the Prime Minister spoke on this topic as well, and also how many of them are expected to be built this year, that is to say photovoltaic power plants. Then you announced some novelty in the area of construction of photovoltaic power plants. We're talking about the installation of batteries. Can you say a few words more about this novelty? Is it going to relate to the already constructed photovoltaic power plants? How much is going to be the cost for the investors? And isn't it going to reduce the interest in this type of investment in green energy? Thank you for the question and the invitation. In 2022, we saw the issuance of 267 licenses for new 150 megawatts of renewable energy sources, of which most photovoltaics, 105, 106 megawatts, and this trend will continue in 2023. For this month of January, we've already issued about 30 licenses. And here we should take into account the holidays. So currently we are having more than 150 requests that are being processed at the Regulatory Commission for Energy, and therefore we are expecting that in 2023 we are going to go to 250, 300 megawatts only from renewable energy sources, because there are some other projects underway in the country for larger photovoltaics that most probably will join the network in 2023. Photovoltaics and the investment in renewable energy sources are quite okay. They should be supported. But one should also know that in terms of maintenance and balancing the system, they can cause problems since they generate energy whenever there is the sun or wind, which is not the case only with the biogas power plants, where the production can be planned. And for those reasons, all of these new investments made in photovoltaics are selling electricity on the free market, usually to the energy suppliers, which is the buyer minus 1%, and our network will be able to support and sustain certain capacity. It is not unlimited, both in terms of the transfer network and distribution network, and it should be balanced because we have somebody should buy that electricity, and we should take into account the commercial aspects. Currently in Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, Albania, Kosovo are seeing investments in this part, and they can see that during energy crisis, the simplest investment is in photovoltaics. Most of the countries are dependent on exports, and companies are investing in photovoltaics to reduce their own costs for electricity. So the batteries, in spite of the fact that they're going to be an obligation, still, for these companies, investors will be reducing the costs to balance or improve the conditions under which the supplier buys the electricity from them. The battery will help them to be more competitive on the market. If we analyze the HUPEX stock exchange in the summer period and now in the winter period, it's surprising to see the curve of the daily exchange trading. I follow HUPEX on a daily basis, and in California they named it a flat curve, actually a goose curve, and it used to be a hump curve, and now during the day it goes down, and it's not surprising to see on the HUPEX stock exchange to see even different prices of electricity or even negative. So these batteries should help the investors, since they're going to be points in time where their electricity won't be necessary. So even in Macedonia, Macedonia is a country of the sun. Our flag has the sun too. And when we made our country independent, one of the factors for this independence was the relatively high energy independence. We had high levels of coal. By 2002, quite of our needs were met by domestic generation of energy. As the economy was growing, large metallurgical plants were opened that were closed down in the 90s, and then we started the different situation, but the independence of electricity was due to the reserves of coal, and our coal reserves are now being exhausted. New investments in thermal power plants are not supported by any financial institution, be it European one, American, or even the Chinese. So there's not going to be investment in coal. So investments in photovoltaics will improve our energy independence. These investments are from private companies, Macedonian companies, that have managed in 2022, an extremely difficult year, when we had prices in September 300, 400 euros per megawatt hour. They managed to reduce their costs for electricity. And in all of this story, we need to find a place for the batteries. That will become an obligation for investors as well, but through the latest modifications to the energy law, there will be a possibility for somebody to make a power plant of batteries and offer such services on the market. Professor Ceaușescu, let me be colorful. Can the sun be our new coal? Can Macedonia on its own produce sufficient electricity to meet its own its own needs, and which needs should it direct its efforts to it? Maybe a mini nuclear power plant will be a solution.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation for this panel. In the capacity of an advisor, maybe I can be of assistance in this energy situation. I would start with a lesson that we can learn from this energy crisis. Only the countries and regions that had larger percentage of domestic production could have tackled the energy crisis. Those that had sufficient amounts could even export. So this was the focus of the government last year, to provide maximum operation and condition by securing fuels for the existing thermal capacities, and the hydro capacities, of course, depend on the water resources. On such note, I would relate to the other speakers. The thermal power plant in Negotino was reactivated after many years. There were certain opinions and views, but it was a spare power plant. The blocks in Bitola are also operational. So what we have today is in good condition, having in mind that these power plants are quite old. What should we do in future? The energy circumstances in our country, in the region, and in Europe are changed from what we know about the energy system, hydro and thermal power plants. Both in our country and in our vicinity, renewable energy sources are being implemented, especially photovoltaic power plants, wind parks. As Mr. Bislimovsky said, these are technologies that can be constructed very fast and can assist in the situation and can alleviate the difficulties. We expect that in 2023 we will have more than 300 megawatts photovoltaic capacities, about 120 wind parks if the ones that are under construction are completed. What to do in future? The thermal power plants are no longer an option. One of the options is the small modular reactors. I would like to present this to the audience and how these technologies have become so popular. This is not something new, but the small modular reactors are the ones that are placed on carriers, and they should be used for production of electricity. On the other part, the political and economic circumstances in the world have changed. We have smaller economies that are not very powerful and cannot create great reactors. So this is a new technology for countries and energy systems that are small. We can consider this option. It should not be excluded. Also, the production of hydrogen. These are quite avant-garde for production of electricity. And this technology, if we are realistic, can be applicable after 2035, 2040, because we need to create conditions. We need to have nuclear infrastructure regarding regulation, nuclear bodies. It is not easy. The technology is quite complex. So we need to prepare ourselves so that we can apply this technology. As I said, we might consider it after 2035, 2040, when we will create conditions. What does this mean from financial aspect? Of course, both from financial aspect and from human resources aspect, it means creating the appropriate human capital that will manage these institutions. We have a regulatory body, nuclear regulatory body, that will need to conduct all procedures, and we all know how it goes. And from financial aspect and human resources and both institutional aspect, in 15 to 20 years, this technology may be attainable. When speaking of energy, it is not a very long period. Mr. Angushев, being a university professor, entrepreneur, and former deputy prime minister, had the opportunity to see the problems in energy from various aspects. What are the key problems that companies face regarding energy, and what are the proposed measures that were adopted at the session of MEA? Thank you for the invitation. Probably we have the time is quite brief, but MEA last year in July proposed a set of measures and delivered them to the government. Most of them were implemented. However, at the last session of MEA, we looked into 3 items, and I will stick to the one that is most important. The first item was how companies spent the crisis period, and this refers to the companies at the free market. This depended on the gas price and the movement of the prices in the following period. And the third one was the renewable sources and how we will make sustainable development of the so-called energy transition. This is very nice to be heard, but it is our only option. There is no alternative, but there are hazards that need to be overcome. Very briefly on the first 2 items, the first item involves the companies that were at the free market. They were left on the free market, and it is good that citizens were supported, that the companies on the regulated market were supported, but we should not forget that these companies employ about 100,000 people, and they managed quite well with few exceptions. But what is most important, we will not go into the GDP and statistical data, but they are the main employers of the small companies that were supported. And if these companies are shut down, the small companies will have no one to work for. So one of the recommendations for the following year was that if prices are still rising, if they remain on this level, we will deal. But the crisis is not competitive in vis-a-vis the surroundings. But if the prices continue to grow, then we will face problems. And this cannot be predicted, because the questions are geostrategic, geopolitical, and it is difficult to make estimates. I will not discuss these issues now, but we cannot assess now at this moment whether this year will have a period with some growth. It may happen during spring and summer. I will stick to the last one, whether Macedonia can be an energy hub. Yes, it can. We must say that I am the greatest supporter of renewable energy, but we need to say that renewable energy sources have their disadvantages. They cannot be controlled. They can be predicted. With a good forecast, you can estimate the sun and wind, but you cannot control it. In that regard, they can cause problems in balancing the systems. We must have renewable energy sources from all types. They have quality energy. The best one is the biogas because it is stable and it works as repeatable. The second quality of the renewable energy sources are the hydropower plants because they can be predicted and they can be controlled because waters do not change so fast. Then we have the wind parks, and the photovoltaics have the least quality because at 20% of the time they create 80% of the energy for the year. So we need to see how we'll deal with this. There are 3 exit strategies that we need to take into consideration because if we do not think ahead 5 to 10 years, then we have no plans. So we have 3 exit solutions. We must mention something that was not said here. We'll have excess energy of photovoltaics during the year, and the region will also have them. Chebren is one good exit solution because it is a reversible power plant, and the reversible power plants are one of the best regulators for balancing of the system. Second, a well-known mechanism in the world that is more modern than the reversible technologies are the battery storage systems, and I'm glad to hear MEA started this initiative. Now they are included in the law on energy, but we should be very careful in securing 3 types of storages. The ones that will be installed within the factories, certain industrial capacities have photovoltaics, and they should have their own storages so that they can transfer the daily energy into another type of energy. Storages within the power plants, photovoltaics, and other power plants. And the third part of storage that will be independent and will give services to the other power plants. All these types of storages should be regulated by law. Because today, if we want to introduce batteries, no one can give you a license because we don't know if this is construction or something else. So I expect that in May, June, we'll have excess of energy from photovoltaics that will need to be exported. I would finish here. This is the third way in which we could store energy, and we see that there will be some exceedings in energy, is the production of hydrogen, that is storage of energy, and the new type of technology that we should take into consideration. Thank you. Yes, we'll speak about it a bit later. This is my second question for you, Prime Minister Kovačevski. Let us start the second set of questions with you. The government last year secured great funds for subsidizing the electricity, and this was planned for this year too. Also regarding the heating. However, the economists know that subsidies are not a long-term cure. They lower the interest for investments, for energy efficiency, for energy efficient facilities. And the solution is in a stable and efficient energy sector that will deliver electricity for relatively good prices. What is the government doing for this country to have stable energy sector that will deliver the economy and the citizens cheap energy and maybe will bring some foreign exchange incomes from exports? Part of your question is actually the answer. This government and all governments in Europe are working in specific conditions because first, we need to manage the lack of electricity and the high prices at the moment. This should not cause price shock for the citizens, and the crisis should be used as an opportunity. We need to create investments that will not allow in future to have such shocks at the energy market as Europe is facing now at the moment. Regarding the first objective, the government secured 760 million euros, the greatest package of anti-crisis measures, compared to all countries in the region and pursuant to World Bank statistics, and we managed to subsidize the price of electricity up to 80%. So if it was not for the subsidized price of electricity for 600,000 households, then the electricity would have been higher by 5 times and by 3 times for the small consumers that are on the regulated market. In that regard, I think that we managed the crisis quite well because there were no shocks in the prices. On the other hand, the investments are moving to 3 directions. The first one is connectivity and diversification of the energy sources. The other speakers said that at this moment we have only one source of gas, one point of gas supply through the Republic of Bulgaria. We are already speaking of investments. The Minister of Economy mentioned that for a new gas pipeline from Greece, another pipeline from Bulgaria, and the potential pipelines coming from the Republic of Albania. This will enable us to finally have replace the coal-produced energy from Bitola and Oslome and to think about establishing gas power plants as transition fuel. Bitola is already connected to the gas pipeline from Midжилова to Bitola. This was completed in December. The last section was done in December. And now it enables one of the blocks where we already have placed in Bitola to install gas power plant that will be used for a supply of heating for the city of Bitola. The same refers to Skopje, because there is an interested private investor who would construct another power plant of this type. But we have the question of base energy, and the renewable energy sources are not this because they have peak energy predominantly, and according to the strategy we need to take into consideration the capacities that are being built in various types of power plants depending on the energy source and the energy that is being used. We have photovoltaics that are dominantly installed. It is good to have small hydropower plants. It is good that we have wind parks and power plants of biogas. The capacity of 2.5 megawatts was installed last year, so we can say that we have renewable energy sources, more than 150 megawatts that provide many households, more than 65,000 households with energy. Chebren and Galište is one of the key projects, a historic one this year after 14 unsuccessful procurements. We have the first one that passed through the first phase, and if this bidder, we're speaking of the Greek PPC, if they meet the conditions stipulated in the public call, and if they conclude the agreements with the authorities in the country, then we will start with the construction of this capital project that on one part will produce base energy from the hydro potential and will also use the excess of the photovoltaic energy for the power plant. And the third part, of course, of the investments is enhancement of the distribution and transmission energy network, the cross-border connectivity with all countries in the region, because we have good connectivity with Serbia, Greece, and the Republic of Bulgaria, but with Albania we're already working on an investment. We'll also need to connect and work with Kosovo and Montenegro, and of course the households should and can produce their own energy, and that is why we simplified all the procedures from the aspect of rule books, regulations, and something that we needed 30 to 60 days to receive a permit for construction of a small photovoltaic power plant for the households. Now this only takes 1 day, but we need to enhance the distribution network of the state transmission of Evana. But as you can see, we have started these activities. They are moving pretty fast. We have installed capacities of electricity. The issuance of permits during this year guarantee that we will have additional amounts of capacities that will be put into operation this year. Furthermore, we continue with the construction of the state projects, complete replacement of Tic Oslome with photovoltaic power plant. We have constructed 10 megawatts so far. There is an ongoing design of the other megawatts, and we'll be first in the region who will apply the European Green Deal, and that is replacement of non-renewable with renewable energy sources. Thank you. One of the measures that in the past period was adopted and was directed at stimulating the consumers were the block tariffs. Minister Bekteshi, what is the experience so far from the implementation of this policy of block tariffs that was modeled recently? Thank you for the question. This is probably a question for the Energy Regulatory Commission, but we continuously work with them for the past year to adopt these measures and to be realized in a way pursuant to the projections and expectations of the citizens and the economy. I will try to be very brief and to share some of the numbers so that the citizens and everyone can be informed regarding the results since the introduction of the block tariffs, and not only the measures and recommendations that were adopted by the government for saving of electricity, including small consumers, and were directed at all institutions since the day when we introduced the measures. There has not been a month when institutions have not saved less than 20% of the electricity, and compared to the consumption in 2021. Although certain critics who lately do not come out to give their assessments, but the opposition laughed at the recommendations of the European Commission and the recommendations made by the government. They laughed at and said that the government tells the people how to take showers, how to cook. Maybe now they cannot give these assessments because they see the numbers, probably part of their management. We know that part of their management are electricity engineers, but they expect that they will not come out in public to give their assessments. As the Prime Minister said, in June we will have the new electricity price, and we'll have decisions that will be in favor of the citizens and small consumers. The block tariffs have provided results. We will cooperate with the Regulatory Energy Commission. We want to introduce block tariffs for the small consumers, and we will see what the analysis will show. Of course, we have invited the experts. If they cannot help, then they should not prevent us from helping. Maybe if they have ideas, they can share them with us, but 70% of them estimate will have increase in the prices, and I'm certain that in certain parts and areas we will have decrease in the prices, but we are not influencing the work of the Regulatory Energy Commission, but pursuant to the decisions of the government and through ESMA, we will try to influence this so that there is no increase in prices. Thank you. Both the measures but also the weather conditions worked in our favor this year, so we have certain savings in the households and other consumers. Those who wanted to play in luck did not complete the championships. Last year we did not have some good weather conditions, but we are ready. The president of the government and we as members of the government said that there will be restrictions. It is easiest to have restrictions, but we will inform the citizens as the neighbors are doing. But this is not an option. We said this on the very first day, on January 17th, when Prime Minister Kovachevsky and the new government started their term. Mr. Kovačevski, you mentioned several investments that are announced as foreign investments. And what is the capacity of the company that you're leading to invest in this area, to invest in photovoltaics, in eco-friendly capacities? What are the projections for the following period? Most of the public know that the state production capacities for electricity are quite old, 40 and 50 and even 60 years old. Mavrovo celebrates 65th anniversary, 50 years for other power plants, 40 years of Rikbitoa. And this shows that these capacities are quite old. They cannot be exploited, the equipment cannot be exploited, but with good investments, these capacities can last for another period. In 2019, the management board and the directors of ESAMA adopted a strategic plan for various investments, for development of investments within the company, that is harmonized with the strategic plan for investments and the energy strategy of our country up to 2046. At this moment, ESAMA has 12 projects for new energy capacities, and all together with the government, and all of these should have installed capacity of 1,760 megawatts, and this is more than what we have at our disposal now. In the past 30 years, almost nothing was invested in new energy capacities. We cannot go back in time, but what we can do in this period is to make use of the new energy capacities and to install them. As of 2019, we purchased the cogeneration power plant of 30 megawatts. Last year, we put into function the first state photovoltaic of 10 megawatts in Oslome, installed on the old coal mines. This is the first investment of this kind in Europe, and I would like to thank the energy community. We put 30 megawatts into operation this year, state capacities, and this was all done in only 3 years. What we are doing is to construct new photovoltaic power plants of 10 megawatts on the old coal mines, following the principle of public and private partnership with companies from Turkey and Bulgaria. And the 10 megawatt power plant in Oslome is in its initial phase, and 20 megawatts of power plant on the old mines in Rikbitoa. In the next phase, we'll have 2 more power plants, 60 megawatts and 100 megawatts, a total of 180 megawatts in the surroundings of Bitoa. This will mean substitution for one of the blocks. And we have plans for photovoltaic power plants on other locations where we have power plants, the hydropower plants. We have support from international financial institutions so that we can construct carriers on the hydro accumulations in Mavrovo, Tikves, and Debar. However, we should do this faster because we are running out of time. And of course, the energy crisis stimulated us to conduct the energy transition as fast as possible. Part of the speakers said that the production of electricity from coal is not future, it is not present, but we use this present to manage the energy crisis. Our company plans to create new gas power plants, cogeneration power plant in Bitola that will be replacement for 2 of the blocks cogeneration gas power plant in Skopje, replacing the existing one in Gazibaba, and of course one large gas power plant that will be installed on the location of Tets Nagotino, because here we have a great opportunity for energy connectivity, but also for connection to this gas system. What we are doing is, in fact, to secure sufficient amounts of gas, the diversification that we have been doing in the past 2 years, as the Prime Minister said, is to increase the capacities on the part of Bulgaria, but also as a company, we have an agreement for lease of a terminal in Alexandropoli for a period of 15 years. This gas should come into our country. We revitalized the gas, the hydro potential in our country, and what is also important regarding the heating, ASM undertook the management of the heating in the city of Skopje. Here, our company will invest in the distribution system to increase the capacities and to expand the distribution network. And what I want to underline here is the construction of the heating pipeline from Bitola to the city of Bitola, because we dreamed of this for the past 140 years, for the past 40 years, and now we'll have organized heating in Bitola, and we really want to see this because it will be organized. And then in the next phase, maybe we'll have other cities such as Kumanovo, Strumica, Kičevo, and all the other towns in our country. I think that we should be very fast, together with the government and all other institutions, to go through this energy transition and to go through the energy crisis. Of course, all these investments that you mentioned will be very important for the companies and the overall economic development in the country. Mr. Bislimovsky, many things in this country depend on the stock market exchange. How are the things with the natural gas? What is the current price? What are the expectations for the following period? And whether, based on these price movements of the gas and electricity, the prices for the Russian gas and oil will be influenced?
We are 100% importers of natural crude oil and crude oil derivatives, and what is happening at the stock markets is seen in our market as well. Part of the consumers from the free market were a bit of problematic. It was a problematic period, I can say. December and January are months where in this part of electricity we have very stable situation, not as high prices. I can see that in January there were about 140, 150 euros per megawatt per hour, and I can say that these are good prices, having in mind that a couple of years ago we had about 50 to 60 euro price per megawatt hour. The EU introduced certain prices for the energy sources except for the natural gas, and they said that the rooftop is about 180 euros, but this is not functioning at the stock market because the electricity is traded for more than 180 euros, and the difference in prices is taken from the EU countries that are dealing with these prices. The EU member countries have stocked their reserves with natural gas on time, and the fear of lack of it was not present. In January, we could have seen stabilization of the prices due to the very warm weather, relatively warm weather in January, 15, 16, 20 degrees Celsius in some capitals in Europe. But when these stock reserves are going to be started to be used when the price was 150 to 200 euros, then the price will start to go up as well, whether it will be mid-February, end of February, or beginning of March, depending on the weather conditions. We expect that there will be a strike to the price of the natural gas somewhere in March or April. Regarding the natural derivatives, there was a ban for trading with crude oil from Russia, and it is not going well. And as of the 5th of February, there will be a price cap introduced for all the oil derivatives sold at the stock markets. This is very important for us since we're taking into consideration the prices of the oil derivatives for each, specifically for petrol, for diesel, for crude oil, etc. In the past 2 weeks, there was an increase of the price of the derivatives for the final consumers, but that meant that there was a movement at the prices of the dinar value, so it is not possible to anticipate the prices. If you analyze from energy aspect, and if you don't have an increased value or cost, the cost for digging the resources are the same, but when we have geopolitical issues, then we will have difficulty to anticipate the prices because they depend on certain issues that are not related to the expertise or experience. They depend on the geopolicy. Thank you. Unfortunately, we as a country are a very small country and cannot influence the geopolitical movement, but what we can do is deal with the energy efficiency. Professor Ceaușescu, energy efficiency in our country is at a very low level. The consumption of the electricity is on a low level related or compared to the developed European countries. How can we improve the energy efficiency in our country? Energy efficiency, together with the renewable resources, environment protection are the 3 basic pillars for achieving the so-called energy or sustainable development. This is not only for us, but for the world as well. This depends on the finances, I would say. The energy efficiency in the last 10 years is mass implemented, starting from the construction, architectonic efficient solutions. It can be seen, and it is seen in the local self-government units, where they have developed and adopted certain regulation regarding the new buildings with respect to the heating, to the isolation of the windows, of the doors of the new constructed buildings. There were some buildings in Skopje, for example, that were constructed next to a heating system. They need to have a heating system included in the construction. This was something that was done as an effort by the local self-government units, but the people individually are investing as well in new, let's say, in windows, new energy efficient isolation, etc., etc. So this is already being implemented. Is it measurable or not, and to what degree, we will see by the consumption of the electricity or the heating energy, etc. But I would say that the tendency in the world is to have everything electrified, the transport as well, the vehicles, the heating, the pumps are being implemented instead of the lumber. this is reflecting in our country as well, but we are not certain to what extent. We will have this as an annual analysis. It's not very measurable, but we can see it through the consumption of any kind of energy. Are we spending a lot or not? I would not agree. We are spending as we need, as much as we need. Can we save more? We can see that the companies had the opportunities and the public enterprises done something in this regard, 15 to 20% of reduction of the consumption. Some of the households did this as well. And I can say that the industrially developed countries are spending more than us, but if we structure the consumption of electricity, they're more using the electricity for production of good things. In the industry, this is a parameter of a so-called achievement of kilowatt hours per dollar, for example. So the efficiency can be seen in this way. How much can the energies be spent for additional net value for the country, etc.? I understand what you're trying to say is that the domestic consumption is at a high level, but we are all doing our calculations and what is best for us. Thank you. My last question is for Mr. Andjushev. Green machines that are produced in Braco, one of your factories, are using the hydrogen. What are the chances for production of hydrogen in our country? What are the preconditions and what investments are needed? Maybe the excess energy from the photovoltaics can be used for this purpose. Yes, since this is a long discussion, I will try to be very brief and concise. One of the manners to use the energy is use of the hydrogen. This is a tendency in the world, worldwide. I'm going to say something in general, then I will answer about the vehicles in specific. The energy, practically, when you have surplus of energy, Marco said it very well, we will have at the stock market a situation that will be visible very soon. We will have prices close to zero in certain periods, and the investors in the energy objects are not going to have any benefit to sell the energy to anyone, and then it will be best with the method of hydrolysis to produce hydrogen. For example, for the power plant in Chebren or the battery system, we're going to talk about hydrogen. It is hydrolysis with that is a method known for hundreds of years. It was a bit problematic that in the part that it need to be stored. This is a reality nowadays. There are trains, planes in Germany, for example, nowadays that are running on hydrogen. This is going to become a reality in the future, just like we didn't believe the electrification of the vehicles is going to become a reality, which is the case nowadays. So in about 10 years, the hydrogenization is going to become a reality. The possibilities for use of hydrogen is very important for us. We are saying we're going to make gasification of all the power plants that we have. Europe is trying to introduce a standard for this for the gas in the country to implement about 20% of hydrogen. So this is an absolutely good fuel, and it is going to become a standard. It means that the gas that we are going to be using in Macedonia further on is going to be mixed with hydrogen. It is going to be a fuel to be used by us. In Macedonia, this is not very well known. I'm not going to use this as a propaganda, but there is a team in Braco that is working for the battery systems. We are working on this for 2 years already now, and development of vehicles, 27 engineers are working on this. We have developed a vehicle. It is not a hydrogen vehicle, it is a vehicle for cleaning. This is a vehicle that is cleaning in Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Paris, Cologne, and now in Paris. We are going to develop, and we are developing, and we are going to deliver these vehicles there. Our engineers from Struga, Debar are working on this. They have been educated at world universities. They returned to Macedonia, working here. The system has about 117 engineers that are working on this solution. And I can say that maybe nowadays this is not a very beneficial solution compared to the energy use, just like the electrical vehicles were not very beneficial compared to the diesel or petrol vehicles, but we are moving in this direction. And as we are installing new energy resources, for example, photovoltaics, we are going to be dealing with the production of hydrogen vehicles. Another thing, if you have a photovoltaic or battery system, the investment is going to be a long-term investment. This is going to be a problem for recycling further on. As far as the hydrogen is concerned, this is a cycle, as Mr. Shushevsky said. This will provide stability in a long term and sustainability. So this is a closed cycle. If you have electricity produced from, let's say, windmill, then you have hydrogen produced. With the hydrogen, you're going to move the vehicle. The final product will be the water that you have used as a starting energy source. So when you have the hydrogen and the oxygen merged together at the end, what is happening in the vehicles is going to be the opposite process. The outcome will be distilled water that you can put in a glass of water and you can drink. It will be pure water. So this is the future, and there is a big perspective in this regard. This needs to be put in our national strategies, since we should be aware that other resources are not available. These are the resources that we have: renewable sources and all the modern technologies. Thank you. Hereby, we're finalizing this panel. I believe that we answered some very important questions with well-thought policies and strategic documents. We can reach the objective for renewable sources and energy transition, and this will contribute for improving of the conditions. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for all of you following this panel. And for the colleagues from the media, there will be a media press questions and answers in the corner media press. Thank you.